This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and buildermastermindgroup.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help you, the small construction business owner, eliminate chaos in your business and make it run without you and maximize profits in the process. I've got a great interview for you today. This is with Charles Antis. He is the owner of a roofing company in California that's been around for over 30 years. And here's what you're going to take away from this podcast episode. Frankly, one of the stories that Charles shares in this episode is one of the most impactful things I've ever heard. So, not to be overly dramatic, but you'll hear about what happens when an entrepreneur gets clarity. More specifically, you'll find out what will happen for you when you get clarity on your vision, that there's something that is better to get wrong than not to try at all. Charles talks about doing well by doing good and what that belief model means, and then how an encounter with a little girl when he went out for a roof repair call really started it all. We'll talk about the business case for corporate social responsibility, why it's good for your business to give work away, the power of authenticity, and how you should be using it to connect with your employees and your customers. Great stuff. This is just jam-packed with goodness. Charles is a fantastic individual, and it was a real treat and a privilege to be able to sit down and talk with him. You're going to get a lot out of this interview. Before we get to that interview, here are a couple of resources I want to share with you. The owner of an electrical contracting business sent me an email a while back that said, and I quote, "Here's a real-life example of the dangers of sending employees to the supply stores. As you can see, this is not a profit bleed, it's a profit gusher." He has GPS tracking on his trucks, so he ran a report showing how much time his vehicles were spending at the supply store, and he said, quote, "The data was staggering to me." How much time is your team wasting every week driving and shopping? And how much is that costing you? Add up the cost of labor, fuel, maintenance, plus the opportunity cost, which is the revenue that you're missing out on. Well, today I'd like to introduce you to Curri, C-U-R-R-I. Think Uber for last mile delivery of construction supplies. You can use the Curri platform to get matched with drivers who have the vehicle you need to move the materials you need, whether it's a small box, a big box, lumber, pipe, pallets, whatever you need. If this sounds interesting to you, visit constructionleadingedge.com/Curri. That's C-U-R-R-I, and get $40 of free credit when you sign up. Stay out of stores with Curri. That's constructionleadingedge.com/Curri, C-U-R-R-I. As a contractor, you manage a ton of jobs every day, and trying to keep up to speed and ensure work actually gets done takes up way too much time. And that's where Company Cam comes in. Every photo and video your guys take at a job is automatically organized by location and instantly synced from the field to wherever you are. Now, you'll know exactly what's happening across your company, be able to communicate more effectively, and cover your butt from future claims. Document your jobs, communicate with your crews, and protect your company, all with Company Cam, the only app every contractor needs. Get started today at companycam.com/CLE. All right, here we go. Enjoy my interview with Charles Antis. Charles Antis, thanks for being on the podcast. How's it going today?
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Todd.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this one. So let's start here. We'll talk about your business and what kind of work you do and how you got started in a little bit. But here's where I'd like to start with this question. Why does your business exist?
That's an easy question. We exist to keep families safe and dry.
Exist to keep families safe and dry. So one thing that caught my attention on LinkedIn, which is how we got connected, is your community involvement. And this statement on your LinkedIn profile caught my attention that says that your belief model is, quote, doing well by doing good. Talk about that. What does that mean to to your business?
I think that CSR, corporate social responsibility, doing well by doing good. Every day it comes out of people's mouths differently. This process of putting people first in business, almost putting people before profit. There's a lot of ways that comes up. And I think what it really is it's a way for me to say, hey, maybe Dad was right. Always do the right thing no matter what. It's kind of like there's a good case for best practices today because the why is much more needed today in a time when things are so often mislabeled. The true why is people are craving that today. So that my team knows why we exist, it really helps them answer questions when somebody calls with a leaky roof. When they know that we exist to keep families safe and dry, number one, they're just worried about getting that roof patched. So it's a pretty powerful message. And then if the message is clear and the message is purposeful, then it really becomes something that rallies your troops and keeps them together and keeps them happy and keeps them answering the question consistently the way you would.
Yeah, I actually just gave a workshop for my local Associated Builders and Contractors chapter this morning and talked about the importance of why, especially in the context of the skilled labor shortage, that people are looking for a company. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They don't just want to do the work. And in my opinion, people will, if they have a choice between two employers and there's an employer that provides basic reasonable pay and benefits and opportunity and that's it, or a comparable option that has all of that stuff plus there's a vision, there's a mission, they're part of something bigger than themselves, they're going to gravitate toward that option.
Yes, and their family is a big part of it. It's not just the worker, it's the spouse and the children of the worker. The questions they ask their dad is all about the why now. It's the same questions that get asked them at school and what they see on TV. So the impact is huge for the family to ask that question and try to get comfortable with it. And by the way, that question hits everyone, including myself, who talks about it every day. Some days it's like, what? What's my why? It's still a new context. It's a new question. It's a question we never heard of, most of us, till a few years ago.
Yeah. You mentioned corporate social responsibility, or CSR. Talk a little bit about what that means for folks who aren't familiar with the term.
That's great, because I remember I was asked to talk about the roofs we give away, and I didn't know what the term CSR was, but I went and spoke with people from Chevron or Bank of America at a high level and billion-dollar funds, and they were using the word corporate social responsibility, and that's how it shows up in the boardroom of large corporations. That's one of the terms for it. I'd say it's often the most common over the last decade, and corporate social responsibility would be the model that a corporation uses to engage its people and its customers in hopefully a sophisticated inside-out strategy. And by inside-out, I mean in an authentic model that people's purposes are being fulfilled, and it shows inside the company and it breathes outside the company. And then all the stakeholders, whether they're clients, supply chain, or people in the community, when they hear the story, they go, oh, and they get it. That's kind of this real, oh, this is purposeful. Oh, because they do this, they have, Antis Roofing, they build roofs, they sell roofs. Oh, so they donate all of the roofs for the local Habitat for Humanity. Oh, that makes sense. That's a corporate social responsibility model. And by the way, I didn't know it was CSR until long after we started donating Habitat roofs, and somebody else labeled me with that.
Yeah, so let's talk about your business a little bit. What kind of work do you do? Where are you located? And how long have you been in business?
Well, I love that you asked that question, because as of a few weeks ago, we are celebrating 30 years of keeping families safe and dry. Wow. So we just had our 30-year in-house celebration. We're going to party and celebrate this for probably a good year and a half, because it's a big deal that we've been in business in an industry where the average roofing company goes out of business every 3 years. Put it this way, over half of the roofing companies in the United States will be out of business in the next 3 years. That's the fail rate of this industry, and we've been in business 30 years. And I think that this is a really cool thing. We focus in Southern California between San Diego, Orange, San Bernardino, and LA counties. And we are exclusively focused in the HOA space. So if you live in an HOA where you vote on your roofing as a block, then you no doubt have seen our trucks in your community. We service 1,300 communities up and down the coast, and we thrive in this. We love the fact that this is a high customer care niche market with a lot of litigation and a lot of things that can go wrong, but we thrive in it because we retain 93% of our employees because we thrive in the community, and we track everything that we do on every interaction with every homeowner in a super sophisticated ERP system. So it's kind of a particular model, high service roofing company.
Interesting. And approximately how many employees do you have?
I will say last I heard 107.
Okay. And 93% retention rate. What's the connection there between such a high retention rate and corporate social responsibility? How do those two tie together, if there is a connection?
There is a connection. So to explain that, I'd probably need to go back and tell you kind of how we got started, and because we were doing CSR 20 years before we knew what CSR was. We were doing well by doing good before that term was ever coined. And so it all started with us, and our retention kind of starts with this story that repeated itself. But the first time I can tell the story was 30 years ago when I just started the business. And that's a time that I had developed a skill working for the company I'd worked at, and that was solving anything that leaked from rain. I felt like I could fix anything that leaked, and I could take siding apart, roofing apart, whatever, and I could find that flashing failure. And so that was what I sold when there wasn't enough work for the company that I was managing. I did the side jobs that I could, and by just getting a couple of calls a week. And so the calls were so important to me that I thought I had to put weather stripping. One day my work was putting weather stripping on the home bedroom converted office, put on the door, so if the customer called, they wouldn't hear any kids crying. And under that kind of condition, I got a call one day from a lady, and she had leaks in every room. And I was like, yeah, whoo, it's like, I'm going to make money on these leaks. I had a mortgage payment on my house I just bought just in a few weeks. It was my first home. I had a mortgage payment due, and I just donated. And so I'd gone out. No, this is what happened. I got the call. I went out the next day because that's how fast. I didn't have anything. I remember I probably said, well, I can move some stuff around and get out there tomorrow, which is what everybody says when they start your company. And I got out there, but as I drove out there, I was surprised because I noticed the homes were getting more smaller. They were getting more disheveled as I got closer to where I figured the home would be. And until finally I turned on the street and I looked to that space, and it was just dead grass and this tiny little house. And I thought, oh my gosh, this can't be the home. And so I went up kind of hoping it wasn't, because there was it said like 240 and a half on it. I thought maybe there was a whole number somewhere else that I was missing. And I knocked on the door, and then three things happened that kind of changed my life. A lady answers the door, this mother of the home with this really tired look on her face. As I was going to say hello, I was hit with this odor of mildew, unlike I'd ever been surprised with that smell before. And so this harsh odor hits me. I'm recoiling, I'm frowning, I'm pulling away. But as I'm pulling away, I get a tug at my finger. And as I look down, there's this little super smiley, in contrast to her mom, this little blonde hair 6-year-old who was just so happy to have like her probably first visitor to her home in several months. And she pulls me in through this dirty living room into a tiny hallway until finally in this little room, which I knew was hers because there was a unicorn poster on the wall that she was so proudly pointed to. But when she pointed to that, my eyes were drawn to the mattresses. There were 4 mattresses on the floor, and they had mold on them. And that's where that smell was coming from. And so this is it. You kind of know where I'm going with this, but it didn't feel happy yet. It was really a frustrating moment for me because this cute little girl who had bewitched me into her room, and yet I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't know that I could. But it was sort of, looking back, my doctor on an airplane moment. I didn't know it, but I mean, who else could fix that roof? I'm a roofer, and they didn't have the money. So that I sat there in this uncomfortable cognitive dissonance, and then finally the mom walked in the room. And I don't know why her face did it and the daughter didn't, but when the mom walked in the room, I don't know where it came from. I looked at her and I said, I'm going to take care of your roof. And I went up on the roof, and I was bummed because it was shot. They needed a new roof, and I didn't have any employees. So I got on the phone, and I started getting volunteers, and we went up on that roof and that Saturday, and we gave them a dry, crude, drippy on the outside, but dry on the inside roof, and the family stayed in the home. And that ended up being a powerful story for us because I randomly ran into those kids for a long time, those 6 siblings. And I would randomly run into those volunteers. And whenever we did, I found that we were just laughing and smiling and high-fiving. And I think that was my first experience of like what I get today and every day when I go hang out at nonprofit events. I get this happy trust. It's almost like there's this trust, there's this alignment that occurs that I never knew could exist before. And so what happened for us is we created a condition in Antis Roofing that I didn't have words for until recently. But looking back, like it or not, I could never let anybody have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. And, I'll say that again because it's a mouthful, but we as a company, we couldn't allow anybody to have an unsafe, undry roof, any family, just because they didn't have the money to pay. And so it ended up being a lot of, oh crap. It was never happy. It's always like, oh, what do we do? Well, let's sleep on it. And then, tomorrow is something, hey, there's a little extra material. Maybe we can do that. And that ended up being why we retained our employees. That ended up being why we were trusted. We didn't really talk about it. In fact, we didn't talk about it at all until about 11 years ago when Habitat for Humanity called. And Sharon Ellis, our local CEO, is a legendary habitat leader nationally. And she called and said, hey, Charles, I hear you donate roofs. I go, yeah. Will you donate a Habitat roof for Habitat Orange County? And it was like, that was like easy. I said, yeah. And then we donated that roof. And then she called me again and said, hey, Charles, we have a military family. Will you donate a roof for them? Like, sure. And then, a lot of conversations occurred. And it wasn't easy to convince my own team. But we have donated every roof ever since that first donation over the last 10 years. And we just hit this year $1 million in donated roofs, along us donating the labor and a lot of the material, and then Eagle Roofing Products USA donating all the tile. So it's like, it ends up being, how we define ourselves, because Habitat for Humanity started talking about us. They started talking about us in a way that my baby boomer mind thought was somehow immoral. They said, because I couldn't talk about the give, it felt wrong to talk about it because that's how I was raised, and then but Habitat, they know every time you frame a wall and lift it up, they would say stop, they want to take a picture of it. And it may not be efficient in the moment, but that picture gets showed and that gets emulated. And so Habitat started talking about Antis Roofing, and you know what they said? They said, Antis Roofing, donating roofs and transforming lives. And that was a really bold claim. It bothered me. I thought, you can't say that, but they did. And then a couple of years later, I was in a rebrand, and I was desperate to really be heard for who we were. And it felt wrong, but I trusted them. I trusted their consultants, and they allowed me to use that in our brand. They allowed us to borrow their logo, have our logo, thinking about their logo, and write in their Antis Roofing, donating roofs, transforming lives. And that's when that didn't happen a lot. Now it happens rampantly because it's really good to show your alignment to the consumer and to your stakeholders, because just like in prison, yes, I brought up the prison word, just like in prison, you're a danger to everybody until you affiliate with the gang. In real life, we're like that. We just don't know it. The consequences aren't getting shipped. The consequences are being trusted or not. And so once you align with the brand and you make a bold claim, the success factor is that how hard you try to live it. You don't have to be good at it, but you just have to be authentic. And today, making that bold claim and being authentic is critical to your brand, because today people are craving authenticity. I'm kind of going off topic now to probably somewhere else we'll go, but it is a really good time to affiliate with a known brand for doing good in the world, because people everyone, whether we know it consciously or not, we're craving authenticity. We see more mislabeling of facts today. No matter what side you're on, you'll see the truth in this. But what we all crave is the ability to see things and brands for who and exactly what they are, because nothing's more scary than being duped on a big level with your values.
Yeah. So in the context, here we are in the mid 2019, in the middle of what many would say is the worst labor shortage in decades. What's the connection there? How does corporate social responsibility and doing good in the community, how does that solve, if it does, how does that help solve the labor shortage?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm in a lot of rooms, I'm on a lot of boards, and I'm a lot of give backs into the industry, and so I hear this pain. In fact, I'm speaking on a panel on this at Western States Roofing with the Roofers Coffee Shop experts, and I spoke at one at the NRCA in Nashville a few months ago. But we're going to talk about this, and I think that I'll say it this way: whenever I'm in that discussion, we're just as competitive as everybody else in that we're trying to get labor to do jobs. I can tell you this: I don't feel the pain that they feel. Now, is it harder to get people in the door? Yes. Is it harder? Is there more offers hitting the labor in the field? Yes. And I'm particularly talking about labor right now because that's where the pain hits the most. You know, our C-suite jobs, those people can cross-pollinate, but the labor is specific. And so I find that at Ansys Roofing, we seem to get the labor we need when we need it. And we might have, you know, the rates are going to change or whatever, and as they go up, that's going to be fine for us. But we don't have the pain other people have. I can tell you a couple other things about it too. I could say this: when the labor shows up, I think I alluded to this before. It's not just them; it's the way their family feels, and it feels to me like it eventually gets to be a family decision. If it's a cash decision or something, or if you have somebody, just put it this way: it's critical for me to have a connection with the spouse, and I think it's, without realizing or having a formalized plan, it's critical to have a connection with the kids. So for us, when we do any kind of group activity with the family, I like to find ways to involve the family, because I think if the worker who works here feels good about it, is one thing. But if the family feels good about where their dad works or where their mom works, I think there's a lot more opportunity, because there's the roofing industry, I'll just say it's not, there's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of bullshit that goes on out there, and pardon my language. And then what I want to do is I want to attract people away from things like cash money payment or partial cash money payment. It happens in our industry, I've heard, more than any other industry, where labor is paid down in cash, and it affects our comp rates and everything else. And so there's a lot that plays into here, but for us, we just don't suffer that as much as somebody else. I don't want to say we don't have a hard time getting talent, but when you have purpose in your company, I mean, and you hear about it, you know, if you look at sales, if you look at if you look at how acquisition occurs for talent in the roofing industry, the NRCA did a study a couple of years ago, and, you know, what we thought was working wasn't working. It's really incentivizing your employees and your network to bring their friends in. So our employees and their friends, they have this buzz that goes on, and everyone hears that Ansys has a 93% retention rate. They see that Ansys has a 93% retention rate, and they start to hear the stories. Why? Because we have a lot of employees that donate their time because they run across the client or somebody that has a cancer or something that they want to help, and we'll donate the product. They hear the story. So there's this reoccurring stories that occur, and the way it affects the wives and the families, where, you know, I've had employees that have left and they worked at other places, and I've found out through them, when I talk to them, that their wives ask them every week, please go back to Ansys, you know. And so there's something powerful when you make the commitment to try to do right by people. And by the way, it's hard for small business to make that claim, because we're not 100% compliant when we start out. We don't even know all the regulations, and you have the need, you feel, to stay below the radar. But I've learned something. If you try to do the right thing, and talk about it best you can, nothing sticks. In fact, if you're doing well by doing good in the community, and you're taking care of somebody, and you do a really goofy job. Well, no, that was your question. You're going to ask me a question later about a big goof up, but I'm going to explain this then, unless you want to ask it now. But you can't miss if you get your heart right in philanthropy and business. And I think we have to talk around that, and you'll have some questions maybe that'll lead me into that. But you can't miss if you get your heart right in business. And retention and attraction are two things that fall very hand in hand. And if we're retaining 93%, it makes sense that we would attract talent 93% faster than our competition, at least. So
yeah, makes sense. So I heard a statement.
I feel like I'm talking down a wormhole here. You got to pull me out when I do that.
No, that's perfect. We'll definitely get to the mistakes. I heard a statement a few months ago. Somebody asked this question. They quoted somebody that's made the statement in a seminar. They said, "What if your business is a people development business masquerading as a construction company?" What would you say? Is your business masquerading? Is your business really doing something else but masquerading as a construction company? If so, what would that be?
I think that's a great analogy, but I won't say it's true because I can't take away from the quality of our work. Mm-hmm. But I can say this: in the event, in as much as you're true as yes, we are developing people. We are helping people reach their full fulfillment. My goal is for everybody to have a mind shift away from where they started and realize just how truly awesome they are, to see themselves in their highest high, and then go out and live it, be fulfilled, and then have that massive impact on the world. So that's where I start from. That's what I want to do. And so yes, that's the most important thing, because Todd, if I develop people well, then we install the very best roof. So look at this. The average roof we install has about 200,000 parts, counting every nail as a part. One nail, if most people know this, driven in just a little bit too far or not far enough, is a potential leak on that roof. And we have 93% of our people installing that roof. When the competition wins that roof, the average is 46% of the labor stays. So 54% of labor is new. So 54% of the parts, so over 100,000 parts are going to be installed with somebody who's relatively new learning that system for that company. And so you tell me, is there a difference? I mean, it all comes back down to quality in the end. But yes, I love that. I don't want to say that without an explanation, but yeah, we are a people developing company. We want people to explode with passion about, oh my God, I'm full of wonderment because my life is completely different today because I am completely fulfilled. I know what fulfills me. My job has now been partially tailored to fill how it fulfills me. And now I'm able to have real impact. And the company's thriving because it's a truly adaptable company because it's listening to purpose.
Yeah, I'm glad you said purpose. What happens when an entrepreneur gets clarity on their why, their vision, their mission, their purpose? What happens to them and their organization when they get really clear on that?
Well, I can tell you what happened to me. So I'm a big proponent of testing. And by testing, let's start with my first time I ever did something that gave me a slightly different view of myself was like a Briggs and Myers test or a DISC test, a personality assessment. I strongly advocate testing because you have a slightly different way to look at yourself, and it might be more accurate than the way your parents told you to look at yourself. Like in a DISC, for example, in a DISC that have 4 categories. I look at DISC, D-I-S-C, and I'm going to give you a quick new way to look at it. If you're an animal surviving in the jungle, you're going to survive by D, being dominant, being the alpha male. If you're the alpha male and you beat everybody up, that's one way to survive. The other way is being popular. If all the animals like me, they won't eat me. The third way is staying middle of the pack. That's the most common way people survive. That's the S. And then the last is the C, that's your caution. The most cautious is going to survive. Well, all of us are driven to, almost all of us have 2 dominants. And for example, I am an ID by my nature. That means that I need to be popular, I need everyone to like me, and I need to be somewhat in control. My caution score is really low. So my accountant has a super high caution score. We all have this thing that we survive by. How effed up is it if we don't know it? If we think we're like our dad and we're super cautious, but we're not cautious, we're outside of the box, then we're not authentic at all. We're miserable people. So you have to know who you are. Another test I strongly recommend, you could do a free disc test, take 20 questions, and you're going to get a profile. It's going to be reasonably accurate directionally of who you are and what fulfills you and what direction you are. Not complete fulfillment, but how you measure yourself as surviving in the world. If you do an emotional intelligence test, you're going to feel, if like you're going to like me, you're going to feel really stupid after taking this the first time. But emotional intelligence basically says if you were surviving on the plane literally 10,000 years ago, you wouldn't raise your voice in front of this group because you knew when anybody raises their voice in front of the tribe, they're likely going to get killed or they're going to have to fight. So there's all these things that we do today that we think we understand why we do it, but we don't know. And that's why, by the way, I gave the reason why we all are afraid to talk in front of people at first. Without understanding the emotional intelligence, then we can't figure it out. So I'm super big on assessing. What got me there was a deep assessment. I have a COO, Karen Inman. She's great at getting me to think deeper. She took my purpose talk very seriously. And in fact, when she came in here one day, I was so impressed with her handling the people. I went up to her and said, Karen, do you realize you have a superpower? And she looked at me kind of without skipping a beat and said, yes. I said, well, what is it? And she goes, I lift everybody I touch every day. And I thought, wow, that's cool. How cool is that my COO has a superpower and she knows it and she claims it? And then a few months later, showing alignment with me, I came into my office. She gave me this invite to go to Seattle to the Imperative Purpose Lab to find my superpower. So I was like, yeah. So I was scared because it was like a 4-day workshop. I didn't know what that entailed. There were a lot of other business leaders, but I went there. I did this deep purpose assessment. And this is where I learned something different. I learned that we're all different. We're all not meant to be managers. We're all not meant to be tutors. We're all not meant to be leaders of movements. But chances are we're designed to be one of the three. And so Imperative does a great job of saying, Charles, there's a reason you sucked at tutoring your daughter. You know, you're not a tutor. There's a reason she pointed at you and said you're mean when you were tutoring her in her math, because that's not who you are. You know, forgive yourself for it. That's not how you're designed. And there's a reason you don't manage well. Most entrepreneurs don't. But there's a reason. But what you are is you are an ambassador. And so what Imperative gave me is my superpower, and that is this. What fulfills me is to ignite passion in others for social change. So this is what I crave doing, podcasts. I love moving my people, waking them up to a higher purpose. I love speaking to the people in the roofing industry, of changing the way we see ourselves. I love my most favorite thing to talk about right now, I think, is that, excuse me, when I started in this trade, I was ashamed. I was ashamed. My brother graduated college. I dropped out. I tried not to talk about that. I didn't know what to call myself. If I'm a roofer, looked up roofer. It was the second lowest job satisfaction score in the index next to ditch digging. And I told people that. I kept my hands in my pocket, didn't anyone else to see them, because I was ashamed of the caulking in my nails, the cracks, and those blackened thumbnails I always had from hitting it with the shingle hammer. And something had a mind shift somewhere along the way, Todd. I woke up and I realized these are the hands that protect all of the families in this country. It's these hands, and those are my brother and sister roofers across the country. And so it's a whole different mindset shift, the way I see myself, the way we see ourselves. And the roofing as an industry is really making this purposeful movement as well. So mine started with learning my purpose, learning what fulfills me, and then coupling with people, partnering with people in industry and in trade and affiliations and in the partners you bring in as your employees that really are purpose-driven and that start to believe that, hey, why not? We can change the world. And if not us trying, then who's going to do it? So I don't know if I forgot where the question was. I kind of went off track there a bit.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. It was about the importance of, well, what happens when somebody gets clear on their purpose.
Yeah.
And So
I am clear now. It's the weirdest thing. And now that I'm clear, I know what I'm supposed to do. And I don't try to manage anymore. I don't try to tutor anymore. So my company's better off. When a founder goes around trying to manage people, he just freaks people out.
right.
So I'm clear now in what I'm supposed to do. And testing is how you get there. Finding out about yourself with these innovative techniques.
Yeah. It's amazing how accurate some of these personality profiles are. I did one several years ago, and it was kind of an unusual testing process. It just asked me to put words in a certain sequence or pick this word over that word, and then it just read my mail. I looked at the report.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it's remarkable.
When I read, there's a guy at the Pinnacle Group in Philadelphia, Grant Mesman. He's the CEO. He's reviewed about 40,000 C-suite people over the years, and boy, when he writes your profile after you take a combination of a DISC and maybe another emotional intelligence type test, he writes your fortune back to you. And I've seen a lot of people do this because I know what happens now. When you give it to somebody to read, they start getting freaked out. They start getting freaked out that somebody knows something, that they're being pranked or something, like how he's describing what my biggest fear is. I didn't write this down. It's like there's something powerful in it when you get a good assessment tool.
Absolutely.
And here's the biggest thing. The most important thing, though, I need to say, the reason it's so empowering is the moment you go, oh, I forgave myself. When I first got diagnosed with this high I with the DISC score a dozen years ago, my first reaction to that, Todd, was, it said, Charles wants to be in the center of attention. I said to my Vistage group, I said, no, I don't. I mean, it was just my natural, because oh shit, this is not good. I need to be like everybody. And then, no, stop thinking we need to be like everybody else. We're living in a world where you're being individual, being authentic is what's going to make you stand out and be trusted. And this was my early learning of that. It's like I'm forgiving myself now that I know myself. I no longer judge myself. I survived by getting along with all the animals. That makes sense.
That's so good. I actually had a conversation with one of my clients recently, and he was dealing with a lot of frustration. And the solution was to realize that he wasn't doing that. The frustration was coming from the fact that he wasn't doing something big enough that was really inside of him. And then when he started to step into that, instead of just being one thing and stepping into a bigger realm, that's when a lot of that frustration goes away. So I'm with you. That is so good. One thing that how important is it for a business leader to not only cast a vision for their people, and manage them, but to inspire them?
I think that if you would have asked me that 10 years ago, I would have given you a different answer. I might have given you an altruistic answer, but I may not have believed it entirely. Today, I think it is absolutely critical that the leader is visible, that the leader is a storyteller, at least telling the stories of some of his people, some of the key stories. I think without that today, I don't know how a company can thrive in the next 10 years. I mean, I say this all the time. I mean, going back to how we started, if you're in business just to make money, good luck staying in business in the next decade. It's going to be all about why you exist. And I really strongly feel that way. We're walking into a time when your company why, your individual whys, the authenticity of the whole story has to line up and taste somewhat familiar and trustworthy, or you're going to have a really hard time in a very short period of time. We're going to redefine right and wrong a little bit right now. And I'm not, and I don't know exactly where it's going to end up, but I see there's a shift right now. There's a shift occurring. And so it's all about having real values occurring in the decisions and stories that line up with you and everyone that in your company. I don't know if that made any sense again, but
no, it does.
Kind of all over
you say you sense that this change is coming, and that a company that doesn't have clarity on their why may not be around in 10 years. Why is that?
Well, let's look at, I don't know, one of the things that just comes to mind right off the bat is if you look at the stats on the Fortune 500 companies 10 years ago, half of them are not there. It's like there's just everything shifting so fast. Used to be momentum in a model was so important. Right now, it feels like if your story isn't there, momentum can just hit a wall faster than it's ever had, where a new story comes in and just shifts everybody over. And I don't want to give examples of Blockbuster or taxi cabs or whatever, because it's not a perfect example, but it's, yeah, I don't know if I answered that very well. I might want to go a slightly different direction. Could you ask the question again?
Sure. Why would a business not be around in 10 years that's not clear on their why? What's changing?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's like, I think I could go a lot of ways. It's like everybody is asking it's like, go back to just the roofing industry. And I like the roofing industry as a metaphor because it's not the most sophisticated industry. It's an important industry. But if you look at that, just at that retention of talent number that we have, it's literally double the national average. And then you look at that other picture that 3 out of 5 companies will fail. There's a huge component, or what's the one thing that Antis does? Well, we talk about purpose. We talk about it with our employees. We give them their superpowers. We do this assessment tool on them. We do all kinds of assessment tools. We try to convert assessment tools to Spanish speaking where possible, where we only have Spanish speaking. So I think that that right there says a lot, because you can't remember the old stat, if you lose an employee, it's going to cost your company $50,000. Now, when I first heard that, I thought, that's crazy. That's so true. In fact, it's more. But there's a new number that they need to be talking about, because we're talking about exponential difference here. The new number is, what happens when 30% of your employees leave? You're lucky to stay in business. So in the roofing industry is an extreme case of that. But we have the same mass exodus of employee and same difficulty in acquiring talent in other areas of construction and in groceries and all industries. So I think that that need for having purpose has just never been higher. If you look at one of the stats of Imperative, which Imperative is more for purpose and work, then however, I think half of 7 of the top 50 LinkedIn companies are booked in with Imperative, like we are, and they have a stat that's pretty accurate, because I've seen it's probably the most accurate. Like 67% of all employees are unfulfilled, and there's like 30% of people that are kind of like what you asked later, that have kind of found their magic or whatever. And what is that thing? They tripped over something. Maybe they had a midlife crisis, or they had that assessment. They saw themselves slightly differently, and then they were able to bring purpose into the conversation. And we see that in departments, we see that in companies. But when it happens in a company on a large scale, it changes everything, because the consumer, go back to that prison model. They don't know who to trust. They're hearing all these things, and if you're a contractor, you have that story that works against you. That's not even your fault. Someone in their family's been taken by a contractor. Those first 3 letters, that con part of it. I used to go to board meetings, and I sell HOAs. There's 4 or 5 people, male or female. I go to a board meeting. There's always one person there, even though we've been around a long time and they know us. They're accusing us of really rotten things. They're accusing us of kickbacks, of stealing money, of overcharging. It's like, why is this chiseler attacking me? What did I do? Well, right now, because we're in the community and we partner with the community, I go to a board meeting and nobody does that anymore, not like that. In fact, there'll be 1 or 2 people, male or female, that will be looking at me across the way, and they're looking at me funny, and like, what's that look mean? They're smiling, they're giggling. Are they flirting with me? Kind of like, what's going on? And finally I'll ask, like, well, how are we doing? And I'll get an answer like, good. I go, why? What are we doing good? They'll answer something like, well, I don't know. We just feel good when we think about you. And that's the difference today. And so why does that matter? Why I wasn't telling those stories 10 years ago. Well, it felt like we lived in a world where the old traditional business models were working. Drucker said this, we do that. And right now, look at who we're listening to. Well, no one listened to me 10 years ago. I was saying some of the same stuff, but the old models were working. Right now, there's a shift, and it feels to me like, I can't give you great backup for this other than some simple stats, but it feels like whatever that HR spend per capita per employee is, whatever that is for your company, to stay in the lead, it feels like it's got to go up substantially more. Is it going to double? I don't know. For small businesses, yes, even more so. There's just a bigger spend. It's going to be a matter of taking care of your employees in a way that their purpose can be fulfilled. Like we give employees up to 2 days off every year where we pay them to go donate time at their nonprofit. We give them a match to up to a certain level on how much they give their nonprofits. We even give them paid days off for their sick pets. We go deep into what's going to work and be heard. And right now, that's what matters because the old models are failing. And I don't want to get into big examples of that, but I think that I feel this is an odd economy. On the one hand, there's some indicators that are good. On the other hand, it's not going to be that surprising if there's some indicators that swing in another way really bad. And so I think purpose is just a really important time. And we're about to go into a trend in the next few years where I believe you're literally not going to be heard. And it comes down to this, we're all kind of we're living in this new world where there's a different currency. And I try to talk about this. It's hard to talk about because we don't have context yet. But some of your listeners probably heard in China 2 months ago, they announced that by 2020, they're going to have a social good currency in China. And this is going to occur, and it's going to get literally people to the front of the line in the bigger house for those that fulfill China's version of what good is. And so don't think the same thing's not happening in Silicon Valley. It's been happening for some time. They're trying to build better algorithms because we're seeing mislabeling, poor self-labeling, people across the aisle politically and business mislabeling each other, and we're craving authenticity. And so algorithms are being built now that are going to build up and they're going to show authenticity. And so this is occurring now. I'm in the conversation. I'm watching it. It's hard to talk about because it's a new conversation, but I'm very visual. So I want you guys to imagine, your listeners to imagine you're looking at a PC screen. And this is what I'm going to describe to you. The new world, the currency is not what it was. It's not cryptocurrency. That's not going to probably make it. And I'm not an expert there, but I'm not trying to understand cryptocurrency, but I'm trying to understand the currency of social good. And it's going to look like this. Imagine 1,000 shooting stars pinpoints, little pinpoints, tiny pictures of people. Imagine thousands of them shooting across your screen like shooting stars. And that's us. That's us. We're all trying to be heard in this new world. Well, Todd, when you have a high social good score, when the algorithms read out that you do donate time, that you do have real trade association partners, that you do have real alignment with contexted nonprofits that we all know who they are, then what happens is you're not this pinpoint shooting star. You're a saucer, 5 inches around, and you're floating slowly across the screen where everybody can see you. I can't explain how that's a new currency, and I can't explain how that's going to work. We see versions of different things being economized by how you're seen, but it's going to massively flip. And I've been talking about this for some time with some other experts, and we're watching this new world occur. But it requires a different language to talk about what's occurring. That's the best way I can do to describe it. It's going to be a very visual world and a very world that needs to tie into what's real, because we've all been duped. We've all been duped. I got a comment today from somebody who should know in a previous meeting that 80% of what we read online is not real because so much is forwarded. Now, I don't know if that's true. I can't bet that, but directionally, it feels true. We are being inundated with phony crap. We crave real crap. And the smartest brains in the world are trying to build algorithms that will vet and lift real stuff.
Awesome. I completely agree. I believe that the construction industry is being disrupted. You mentioned Blockbuster. I use the exact same example. If you contrast Blockbuster with Netflix, they both offer the same result, which is a movie on your TV screen. Blockbuster required you to do things, get in your car, and back in the day, you had to go drive to Blockbuster, pick out a movie, drive back home. Maybe it was there, maybe it wasn't. Now, Netflix and Amazon and other live streaming services offer the same result. There's still a movie on your screen, but the experience is very different. And I believe that what's
just like Blockbuster got disrupted because somebody came along and offered a better experience, construction companies are getting disrupted now. There are companies who are coming along and offering the same result to their external customers, the people they're installing roofs for, just like you said, those people that you worked with, they feel good working with you, right? That's a different, it's the same result, maybe better result, but it's certainly a different experience. And then there are internal customers, employees who, if they have the option to choose between two employers, both of whom provide basically the same result, pay, benefits, paid time off, truck, etc., but one offers a better experience and offers an opportunity to be part of something bigger than themselves, and to be part of a mission, to be part of a team, then those companies will win the war for talent. And it's not that they're going to have to steal people from other companies.
You're right.
They're going to leave.
Well, that's kind of what we're experiencing. We're experiencing that in the roofing industry right now with Reed Ribbles and Bill Good. They collaborate beautifully, but we're really watching that happen as a trade. 2 weeks ago in Arizona at the Wigwam Resort, the Roofing Alliance for Progress, the Roofing Alliance got together, and that's the philanthropic arm of the National Roofing Contractors Association. And so it's really the best companies. Everybody there is committed a minimum of $50,000. Manufacturers think a minimum of $150,000 just to be there, and that money goes for education, advocacy, philanthropy, and to all the betterment of the trade. And we were there, and there were 80 of us. And what was really cool is one of the things we talked about was this Ronald McDonald House give, because now the roofing industry is keeping all of the families safe and dry and close to their sick kids, at the nearby children's hospital. And so what was awesome is I took my personal friend, because he's here locally with me, Fred Hill, the original founder of the original Ronald McDonald House, who played for the Philadelphia Eagles in 1974, I brought him and Fran, and they spent 4 days with the big-hearted roofing professionals from across the country. And the reason I wanted this to happen is I know big hearts, I know how they get along, and I knew there was going to be a love fest. And let me tell you something. I watched Fred and Fran Hill have intimate discussions with every family in this industry that is making this big difference. And it was this beautiful thing. And now all these roofers are going to go home and have the same story that I have, because I know this original founder, this guy who started the first corporate social responsibility model in the world. He didn't know what he was doing. He just had a sick daughter, and he wanted her to live. And he listened to the doctors, and the doctor said, "Listen, Fred, there's no home. The families can't stay near. And if we could keep the families near, the child could heal. The family could heal." And because of Fred, this guy started this home in Philadelphia, and now there's 500 around the world. And the other part of this is, and the part that we're experiencing in the National Roofing Contractors Association, is McDonald's, if you haven't checked, serves over 1% of the food consumed in this world. There's no way McDonald's could be halfway there without this model that they wrote, that they proved, where they have a responsible, visible connection to the community. Now, I want to give you a little more information. Since I brought up McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House, I happen to know this because I'm involved nationally on the GIF, but I'm also on the local Ronald McDonald House board. Ronald McDonald House only receives 15% of its operating expenses from McDonald's Corporation. They were, but they're the ones that really pushed this after the Philadelphia Eagles got it started. McDonald's grabbed this, and they proposed the naming the house the Ronald McDonald House, and that's what it's been ever since. But this whole model, this huge success in fast food, could not have occurred without the balanced partnership with the community. And now, as a National Roofing Contractors Association member across the country, we're all holding hands, and we're looking at ourselves differently. And we're going, wow, we're the superheroes. We're the cowboys that are up on the roof when no one else will go. We're the ones that are protecting all the families and all the stuff in this country. And we're seeing ourselves for that. And we're being led as if we are really important people doing great things. So it's a great time, I think, to be. In fact, you know what I love right now? What I love right now, Todd, is I'm changing the subject slightly, but what a great time it is to have a trade. 5 years ago, my friends that had a store, I was so jealous. If people come to you, well, they don't come anymore. Their stores are closed. Everything's going through Amazon. Models are being disrupted. But you know what? By gosh, everybody needs a roof, and they always will. So those of us with trades, we just have to learn to be really adaptable. And you want the best key to be adaptable, take care of your people. If you have your people, if you retain your people, then you can adapt to anything. So being adaptable doesn't scare me like it used to, because I know I'm retaining my talent, and I'm up against a roofing company that's got half new talent. I don't know how he can do anything new that year, or we could do a lot of stuff new.
Awesome. Well, we keep teasing about mistakes, and we got to get to this before we run out of time. What has been your most educational mistake that you'd like to share with us?
Man, I just think of all these mistakes I've made, but I'm going to say an unintended consequences. When I talk about unintended consequences, I like the happy surprises. So I'm going to give you a happy surprise unintended consequence, because I've been talking about giving the whole time. And I can tell you this, I know most of the baby boomers that are listening to me right now are cringing. Ooh, can you imagine putting in the paper your ad that you're changing the world one roof at a time? I mean, it's like, oh God, that seems so wrong. People are going to think I'm overclaiming, so this is what I've learned. I've learned that if you truly have the cause in your heart and it aligns well with your brand, like I'm a big fan of Mothers Against Drug Driving. We hire them whenever we have a big, like if we rent out the House of Blues and have alcohol, I'm going to have them sponsor because it's the right message. But I don't have MAD on my logo years around. It just doesn't make sense. So, but Habitat for Humanity, it does. So this is my unintended consequence. My big mistake was I was desperate enough to try to get the messaging right. And so, like, even though I'm a baby boomer and it felt wrong, I said, okay, Habitat, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about this. And this is what I learned. My mistake, I'm going to give you a mistake. The mistake is, I'll say as a company, we tried to do a giving model a few years ago where we copied the Pokemon craze. So when people had the little Pokemon finder on their phone and they were bumping into things, well, we had a Pokemon outfit made, and one of our salesmen wore it, and then we had clients at Habitat builds and everything try to hit them with these balls, and they would win cards to get money to give to their local nonprofit of choice. Now, if that sounds confusing, because it was ridiculous. It didn't make any sense. Nobody understood it. I tried to explain it over and over again. Nobody understood it. The live moments we were there, the Velcro wouldn't stick. The Velcro never stuck to Pokemon. We had to slam it on there. But here's my point. It worked beautifully. It didn't work in the classic sense of the word, what we thought worked, that marketing has to be profound and good. It worked because it created this goofy, clumsy claim that we're trying to do good, and nobody understood it. But at the end of the day, it left this stain, because at the end of the day, we were on the Habitat build. And so one of the things I discovered is when you hit it wrong in social giving, so long as your motive is good and you've done a decent job of trying to brand with aligning values people, then you're better off talking about it and messing it up than not talking about it. So the Pokemon give, times that we overclaimed, there's so many things, because our competition might have said, oh, look at Ansys, they don't know what they're doing, or they're doing this, they're not really doing this. Look what they're saying they're doing. What happened is everybody that looked went, oh my God, how can you condemn somebody who's goofily talking about something they're doing? So one of the things I've learned is when you're doing good, be willing to be clumsy and talk about it. Just don't call yourself a philanthropist or do anything. Don't make too bold of a claim. But if you believe that you can change the world by how you engage your customer and by how you take those profits and give some back to the community, then I think that's a bold claim that we made and it worked. Or transforming lives. I mean, when somebody's able to buy a Habitat roof or buy a Habitat home and they get out of that cycle of poverty, do you know what happens to their children? I mean, the success in college and what happens in the families that get into Habitat homes is tremendous. So once you understand what's really happening, I know that even though it feels hard to say it, it feels against what my baby boomer brain says, by saying donating roofs, transforming lives, we're making a real claim that's real. It's like, and so it's I think that's my thing. It's like, wow. Stop worrying about what you're saying, baby boomers. So long as you're trying to do it and it's real, then you're better off talking about it than you don't, because at least people have a chance to see that authentic part in you. And by the way, people need a little bit of clumsiness to poke at. If you're too, it's like, that's why off the cuff video works better than sometimes super staged video today, because it's real. We need to see a little folly in you. I remember I was at a sales meeting a long time ago. I had a really sophisticated salesman. He was selling in front of a board of directors, and all of them were looking at him like he was a phony. Nobody was buying it, I thought. And then he walked over and tripped over the cord on the projector and almost fell down and smashed his face. And there was a concern. Somebody laughed at him. And then ever since that moment, they loved him and he sold the job. So what is that? So there's something clumsy and wonderful that happens when we talk about nonprofit work that it you don't get away with maybe in other areas. I would say nonprofit or any sort of give back work.
Love it. So good. Well, we are just about out of time. This has been fantastic. I know we could talk for hours, but if people want to connect with you, find out more about what you're up to, connect with you on social media, follow you, where should they go?
I only, although Antis is very active in social media, we're on 5 channels. I only actively do one channel, and that's LinkedIn. So they should reach out to me on LinkedIn. I try to talk about the good that we do in our company, a few posts every week. And I have a network of people around the world that are similar. I love that. And I have a lot of people that just kind of watch to keep their, finger into how it's shifting. And so I love that. I love having contacts. And I love talking about philanthropy, how it occurs in different areas around the world, because that's how we learn and grow it.
Fantastic. So I'll include the links at the end of this podcast, but this has been fantastic. Charles, thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, man. This is really great. Anytime you want to do it again, let us know.
Hope you enjoyed that. As always, I recommend you take action. What is one thing that you can take away from this podcast to put into practice, to make it show up in your business, make it show up in your life, so you get some value out of this? Be sure to check out the show notes for the links and the resources mentioned in this podcast episode. If you're wondering, where are the show notes? If you open up the podcast player, you'll see some show notes there and some details. And if you scroll down, you'll see those links. If you're listening on YouTube, then you can look in the description and you'll see all that. As always, I appreciate the ratings and the reviews. If you could take a moment and leave a rating and a review on the podcast player that you're listening on, that would be fantastic. And if there's somebody that you know who needs to hear this podcast, do them a favor and share it with them. Let them know. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Todd DeWalt. Be sure to check out my website, constructionleadingedge.com. And if you want to join a group of like-minded construction business owners who share ideas and avoid costly mistakes and build relationships and provide accountability, head over to buildermastermindgroup.com. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time. Remember, with Company Cam, there's no more second guessing about what's getting done or pestering your crews to send you pictures. Every photo and video your guys take at a job is automatically organized by location and instantly synced from the field to wherever you are. Now you'll know exactly what's happening across your company. Get started today at companycam.com/CLE. Don't forget to visit constructionleadingedge.com/curry. That's CURRI. To request a 15-minute demo or just sign up directly for a free $40 credit on your Curry account. Stay out of stores. Start using Curry for construction material delivery today. That's constructionleadingedge.com/CURRI.